Hello, this video is to comprehensively go through all of the features of this controller, Mini Control 2. I'm hoping to break down this video into small bite-sized chunks and to keep things snappy. So let's get going. First of all, let's go through the standard features. You are able to adjust the maximum brightness of the LEDs here of your Mini Control by holding up the center toggle switch and dialing your selection in with encoder A. So that's the maximum brightness at 100%. And you can set it down to very, very dim, 1% there. The brightness selection is saved to internal memory and will persist over reboot until you next change it. Let's take the brightness up very slightly. You're able to put the Mini Control into standby by holding the toggle switch down like that. Now the Mini Control is in a low power state. Nothing you do on the front panel here will do anything to the 8 series. And then you can wake from sleep by doing the same thing, holding the toggle switch, the center toggle switch down, and it will wake back into the last mode that you set it to. New in firmware 2.4 is a method of rebooting the Mini Control, should you want to. And you do that by holding the toggle switch up and holding encoder B down. So let's do that, and then I will show you the boot sequence. So holding the toggle switch up and encoder B down, then we get the power on flash, the mode indicator, 3 green flashes, and then we get the solid lights and blinking here. Now this is the Mini Control negotiating its connection with the 8 series. The Mini Control is saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and then it's waiting for a response from the 8 series. When it gets that response, you get the solid lights and the Mini Control is ready to use. Now there's a couple of other things you can do during either a power on or a reboot. The first of which is you're able to hard reset the Mini Control. You can do this if you want to reset all of the internal settings, the configuration options that I'll go through a bit later on. And it also resets the brightness to 100%. And you do that while it's powering up by holding down the 2 encoder buttons and the center toggle switch upwards. So let's do that. So I'm going to reboot and then hold down the 2 buttons, the 2 encoders. And we get 2 white flashes there. That's to signify that a hard reset has taken place. Then we go back through the connection negotiation. Now the next button combination I can show you is the ability to display the firmware version. And that can be done on boot up or on reboot by holding down the toggle switch and both encoders down. So let's do that by first doing a reboot, and then we'll hold everything down, and then we get 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that signifies that the current firmware version is version 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2.4. Okay, now let's do a quick reboot so I can talk to you about modes. Let's reboot here. And you'll notice that you get 3 pulses. 3 red pulses indicates that we're booting into gain mode. Now there's 3 different types of modes with the Mini Control 2. Gain focus mode, fader focus mode, or combination mode, combi mode. So in gain mode, we're making gain changes to the 8 series. When I've got the Mini Control configured for 833, we're making gain changes to channel 7 and 8. But when configured for the 833 plus 4, we're making gain changes for 7 and 8, and then I can advance through the channels. So 833 plus 4 will be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Similarly, on an 888, we're on 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. Scorpio, we're on 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now, the different modes can be accessed by first going into standby, and then we can cycle to the next mode by not waking up from standby, as I said before, by pressing and holding down. This time we're going to press and hold up. So we'll then move into fader mode, which is 3 green pulses. Now we're making fader changes for 833 plus 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 and so on. You get the idea. Now we can cycle to the next mode and we go into combi mode. Now combi mode is a simple mode designed for people who just want to control 2 extra channels. Like me here, I've got my 833, my 2 4-channel Wizicom mics. So I've got 4 channels here, 4 channels there. I've got the 2 spare channels, 7 and 8. So I would control channels 7 and 8. So in combi mode, you've got 2 sub modes, which is fader and gain. So I'm making a fader change here when it's in green, and then a gain change here when it's in red. Right, let's cycle back to gain mode. Let me show you some common features. In gain mode, actually across all modes, if you click either encoder, you select either channel. And if you make a double click on either channel, the mini control sends a control change message to the H series, which you can map in the menus to any number of triggerable actions. So I've got the set to play and stop at the moment. So let me just demonstrate. Double click is play and double click is stop. Now we've got some additional stuff here. So in gain mode, if we press and hold, we're PFLing channel 7, press and hold, we're PFLing channel 8. Now let's move into fader mode here. Now the same goes. I'm selecting each channel. I can do the double click stuff. But this time in fader mode, as a quick means to get into the gain settings, when you press and hold, you get this rhythmical blinking. So now this means that the mini control is making gain changes for channel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with an 833 plus 4. At any point, I can take this out of quick gain mode, is what I call it, and we're back to making fader changes. Quick gain, fader changes. Let's cycle back into gain mode. So we can start from a common place. And I'll go into the configuration menu next. Okay, let's talk about the configuration menu. Out of the box, the mini control is able to be configured for use with a base 833, an 833 with a +4 plugin, an 888 or a Scorpio. There's also a number of on-off options that you're able to configure in the menu, so you can use the mini control how you see fit. Now the way you get into the configuration menu is by holding the toggle switch up and encoder A down. Let's do that. So the configuration menu entering is signified by that white pulse that you saw earlier on encoder A. Now as you press encoder A, you're cycling through red, green, blue and white. Red, green, blue and white. Now these signify the device configuration. Red is base 833, green is 833 with a +4 plugin, blue is 888 and white is for the Scorpio. Now it's very important that you set this setting to the correct device that you plug it into. So I've got mine set to 833 +4. Now on the right encoder, you've got a number, if you see what I'm doing here, you have a number of toggleable on-off options. Red, green, blue, white, and yellow. Each of these change how the mini control works. Red signifies rolling channels. Green signifies additional channels. Blue signifies strict controller configuration. White is free configuration. And yellow is level meters. All of these are toggleable on-off. Now what happens when you leave when you make a selection, you make a configuration selection, there's a timeout of around 6 seconds, at which point the mini control will reboot with the selections that you just made applied. So let's turn on rolling channels here. Let's see what that does. So I'll show you this once. We get the reboot, and we go into gain mode, and then we get the connection negotiation. Now let's fast forward through this. Okay, so now with rolling channels on, we're making gain changes to channel 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. If I then press down, we go back to channel 7 and 8. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Similarly, if I go to 7 and 8, I can go upwards back to 11 and 12. So this takes, say for instance, you're making a change on 11 and 12, you quickly need to change something on 7 and 8, you can go down instead of having to cycle all the way back. So that's rolling channels. Let's go back into the configuration menu and I will show you additional channels. So let's turn rolling channels off and additional channels on. Now I need to change the device configuration to 888 because there's no additional channels available for the 833 plus 4 because we're already controlling channel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Additional channels gives you on the 888 in Scorpio an additional pair of channels to control. So on the 888 you'll be controlling 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and additional channels gives you 15 and 16. On the Scorpio, you will be getting 12, 13, 14, 17, channel 17 and 18. So let me just demonstrate. On the 888, we've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you would have 15, 16. On the Scorpio, you would have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, sorry, 19, 20. 19, 20 on the Scorpio. Okay. That's additional channels. Okay, let's go back into the configuration menu and I can show you strict controller configuration. First of all, let's reconfigure the mini control back to the correct device, which is 833 plus 4. We'll turn off additional channels and we'll turn on strict controller configuration. Now, when we get the reboot here, you'll see that we don't get the usual connection negotiation. We just get immediate solid LEDs. That's because the mini control has established a full two-way communications link with the 8 series here. Now this means that the mini control knows different states that the 8 series is in, and it allows me to add a couple of nice new features, one of which is when you make a selection you get these nice yellow pulsing LEDs here. So I've selected channel 8, so I get the pulsing LEDs, yellow, and it's nicely matches the yellow pulsing ring LEDs that you get on the front panel of the 8 series. A second thing is that the mini control knows the state of the faders. So everything is synchronized properly. If you were to make some kind of volume change on another controller, for instance, that you've got plugged in at the same time as the mini control, or on the SD remote app, all the fader levels are synchronized to the mini control. So there's no fader jumps or anything like that. One caveat to strict controller configuration is the fact that it will freeze your fader pots here. Now this is as to be expected. This is a Sound Devices thing, and it's to avoid faders jumping all over the place if you to make changes on two separate devices. And the way around it is you need to put your 8 series into, you need to make the change here, soft fader trim pickup. You need to turn that on, and that will unfreeze your pots. And you can, with a bit of wiggling, you can regain control of your pots. Now that's strict controller configuration. Okay, let's go back into the configuration menu and I can show you free configuration. Now I'll leave strict controller configuration on for now. Let me quickly show you free configuration. Now this configuration mode is to put your mini control into a state whereby it controls from channels 1 onwards of any 8 series. So with the 833+4 here, we're going to be controlling channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And that applies to any of the 8 series. So you might notice that this ended at 5 and 6. On the 833 stock or 833+4, as an add-on to free configuration, you can turn on additional channels, which will give you an additional 2 channels, which means you can control channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and 8. I'll just show that to you as we properly boot it up. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Okay, that's free configuration. Okay, let's go back into the configuration menu and I will show you the last configuration option. So let's clear all of the on-off options here and we'll turn on this yellow option, which is level meters. Now, in order for level meters to work, you also have to have strict controller configuration on. In addition to that, level meters aren't working properly for the 833+4 at the moment. So I'll put my 833 into 833 stock configuration and I will show you how it works. So we go through the usual reboot process, which I will fast forward. And you see that the LEDs immediately dim down to 1%. Well, I hope you saw that. Now, if I activate my Slate mic here, you'll see that channel 7 there is being modulated. It's not 100% clear because of the way that this camera works, but let's change the brightness. So let's change my brightness to 100% here. Now the brightness level is being modulated by the signal going into, in this case, channel 8. Now the brightness settings, your maximum brightness that you set on the mini control is the highest point of the top level of modulation here. So at the moment I've got it set to 100%, so there's a big range of brightness movement. But if I want to have my mini control set a little bit dimmer, you can take it down a little bit and the modulation is apparent. So that's level meters. As I said, it doesn't work at the moment with the 833+4. However, it does work with the stock 833, with the 888, or with the Scorpio. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's everything. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy using your mini control.